Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I am introducing you to Angela Turpin. Listen, you guys, she is a self-proclaimed self-sabotage slayer, and I cannot wait for you to meet her and to hear her story. So, Angela, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I have to say, I really appreciate you still showing up when things were not, all perfect in your world today. So it means a lot to me and I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I feel like showing up no matter what is what we have to do.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess to get the conversation started, let's start with tell us a little bit about yourself and your business and kind of the journey you took to get where you are today.
Sure. So my journey started about 10 years ago. I started to dive into personal development because both my professional life and my personal life were completely falling apart at the same time. And usually it was my personal life that was falling apart. And that was okay with me because I could just dive into my professional life. Like I worked 18 hours a day. I worked 2 full-time jobs. And then I went to school and did all those things. So I was completely distracted. And it was the first time in almost 5 years that I was only working one job. So I was working maybe 40 hours a week. And so I had a bunch of time on my hands to think about things. So I really started to dive into personal development because I had hardcore depression and anxiety that nobody knew about because I was highly functioning, right? And so I started to dive into the MBTI, and then I started to dive into Tony Robbins and starting there. And then I unexpectedly got pregnant with my daughter. And I realized that I had to really start dealing with the trauma that I had only remembered maybe a few years prior to this, and realized that there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't dealt with that I needed to deal with right then. And a lot of it was sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional, like just the whole nine. I had years and years of trauma that I didn't realize was currently impacting my life. So I spent my entire pregnancy and postpartum healing from sexual abuse, and also dealing with her father, who I was not with, and trying to navigate that whole thing. During that time, I had my business as free as you see. And I just didn't know what I was doing at that time. So I was just blogging about everything that I was going through as far as my healing and things like that. And then about 2 years later, I told my friend, I'm just going to help women heal trauma. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help them heal trauma, and I'm going to change the way the world looks at trauma. And then I got scared and didn't want to do it because there's no way that I was going to share with the whole world my entire story, that I had this childhood sexual abuse that was happening for years and years and years, or that I unexpectedly got pregnant, right? Like I don't want to say I wasn't dating the guy, but we had only known each other for 2 weeks, right? So there was a lot of shame around that. I didn't want to share that with anybody. And so I helped women, corporate women, get unstuck because I knew what it was like to be in corporate and do all those things. But I hated it. I just hated it. And then my daughter's dad sent me this really triggering text message because we had been going to court for years at that point. And, he told me that I was a fraud, told me that the only successful thing I had ever done in my life was get knocked up by a guy with a good job and stuff like that. And I was just like, wow. So unfortunately, he was just mirroring to me what I felt. And so the next week, I was like, I'm helping women heal trauma. This is my story. This is what I'm doing. And immediately my business took off. My group grew to 1,000 people. Like it just took off. And then I sabotaged my entire business. And then I shut that business down because I put it into the ground. My life was a complete mess. I was in a very unhealthy relationship, even though I thought I had healed all of these things.
Yes.
And realized that I had just tipped the iceberg with healing my sexual abuse and things like that. And then I started rebuilding my brand and rebuilding my business, which is what you see now. The Transform with Angela is the new business and the third business that I have rebuilt for probably the last year or so, the last 18 months after completely destroying my business. And now I help women do that because all of our self-sabotage is highly connected to all of the developmental trauma that we experienced through the ages of 0 to 7. So it all coincides, right? It all is the same thing. We just don't realize it's the same thing until we're in the thick of it, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm just like nodding. Yes, yes, yes. The whole time you're talking. So I'm like, where do we go from here? Well, okay. So that's an amazing story. I think that speaks to your resilience and your courage and your belief in yourself, which I know from experience is not built in a day. How have you embraced this idea of starting again?
It's been one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. When I've failed in the past, not that no one knew about it, I didn't fail in front of thousands of people, in front of my audience, in front of clients. Like I had never experienced anything like that before. And so I really had to be very comfortable and learn to accept that I had to go back and face everything that I destroyed and be honest about it at the same time, because I had these followers, because I've had this audience, and I've had these loyal clients. So learning how to start again, or moving forward to start again, for me was really about facing my own destruction and admitting that I failed, and it had nothing to do with anybody else, but the very thing that I teach people how to overcome. Like there's this moment sometimes when you're a coach that you feel like you're not allowed to make any mistakes, or you're superhuman for some reason. And it's you're not immune. You're not immune to failure. You're not immune to any of those things. And so I had to really come into acceptance of those things so I could start again.
Well, and let's talk about the self-sabotage, because I think that's one of those sometimes hidden under the surface things that we don't even realize we're doing. So I know myself, I know self-sabotage very well, from lots and lots of experience. But what do you think, like, how did that look in regards to your business? How would you say that you were self-sabotaging and burning your business to the ground?
Sure. So the first thing that really physically manifested in my business was when I decided to shut my group down that had 1.3K people in it, right? And I was like, I'm going to do this out of alignment. And so I just shut it down. And what I didn't realize at that time is it had nothing to do with the group being out of alignment, but that I was out of alignment. But so because I had really tapped into doing things based on inspiration and this aligned action, and doing things like that. And not that that's wrong. I don't want anybody to feel like that's wrong, but I was purely out of alignment. It had nothing to do with the group itself. It had nothing to do with my business. So I didn't realize that it was really about me and not about the group. And that's when, as soon as I did that, that's when everything else started to, like, it was like a domino effect.
Yeah. Well, And I fully believe that our experiences are only ever mirroring where we are energetically.
Right.
But I think it's not a common way to look at things. Most people look at what's happening to them as if it's happening to them, and
Right.
not it's happening for you to illustrate where you are off energetically or misaligned. So, what do you think today is your key indicator when you're like, oh, hold on, I'm teetering towards being out of alignment? Do you have a telltale sign now that clues you in faster than it did back then?
Yes, being highly connected to my body. And I'm so connected to my body now that I can literally feel the sabotage come out of my body. It's almost like, and I know it's not comparable, but it's almost like an addiction, right? Like when you fiend for something and you're like, oh, I'm going to go do this. I have to have this. I need this right now. It is like the same thing that comes out of your body with sabotage. And that's when I started to recognize certain patterns that were happening. I could feel my body go into overdrive. And I suddenly realized that my body was sending me these signals and these feelings of wanting to go in and sabotage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what sabotage is. Like I can literally see the pattern like happening from my body. And that's when I started to realize, okay, this is what it feels like when I want to sabotage. And that's how I learned to cut the pattern quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, well that's the key, right? Is to start recognizing that there is a pattern and when it's happening so that you can change the story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And part of that, I want to make very clear, like when we talk about body connection, if you don't feel safe to connect with your body, you want to start there, because it's the same thing with, like, I know mindset is huge for people and I think that that's great, but I don't believe mindset is everything. I believe safety is everything. And so if you do not feel safe being present in your body or being connected to your body, you're not going to be able to recognize these certain patterns. And that's why that safety is so crucial to everything that you do, really.
Yeah, and I think that really touches on an important part because I think there's a there's a big chunk of the population that has these traumatic experiences that makes it feel unsafe to be connected to your body. And then you have
Yeah.
this whole other section of the population that doesn't know what that's like, that has
Right.
not had that level of trauma to know what it's like not. So that second group of people, it's easy for them to start with mindset and to talk about body connection because they're not struggling with the first piece of it, which is it's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like
Right.
our basic need is safety. And
Right.
so if you don't have that, you can't possibly move up to the next sections because you're still focused on how do I feel safe just being me and my body.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. Which means you are serving a whole different section of the population. Like you're allowing people to build that foundation so that they can then go on and listen to the Tony Robbins and all the other amazing gurus in the world, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Well, so when you look at your story, what do you think inspires you most about it?
Um, how much I refuse to give up. There's been so many times that I've been crying in my journal, even with my business, right? Even before I started to see all that success, like today's the day I'm quitting. I can't do this anymore. I want to quit being a mom. This is so hard. Like maybe her dad really should just take her. Like I can't do this anymore. Just all of those moments and those things where I'm just like, all right, I'm going to cry it out. I'm not going to work today because obviously I need some rest or need to restart or whatever the case may be. Maybe
Yes.
I need to take a break from being a mom. Maybe my mom needs to come watch my daughter so that I can feel like I can restart or feel rejuvenated and just keep going. And I wish I knew how to explain what it was or what it is in me that just doesn't want me to give up, but it's just there. And it's always been there my entire life. And it's just not in me to quit. It's just not. Like, I've done so many rounds with life even before I started healing, that getting knocked down is so much a part of my life that it's like, all right, we're just going to get back up and see how many more rounds we can take. And so I've just always been that way.
Well, and I think each of those knockdown moments is a moment where we can learn a lesson or gain wisdom. And there's something in that experience that better prepares us for what's to come. And so
Yeah.
when you look back on your journey, what do you think is the common theme in your lessons?
Probably that I can be my own worst enemy. That it's always, I don't want to say that it's always me. There have been traumatic events, of course, but it is the way that I perceive things. It is the way that I think about things. It is the way that I continue to allow myself to be the victim, even though I've worked on that for a long time. It is always that that I'm the mountain, right? There's that book, You Are the Mountain. Like, that's what I see come up all the time. The answer is always me. It's never anybody else. It's never what I'm doing. It's always me. And I feel like that's been the most common theme throughout my journey.
Yeah. Well, and you're hitting on both personal and business, which I think is amazing. I think we have a tendency, especially as entrepreneurs, to constantly seek outward validation and ask somebody else what we should do. And really, it is always us. Like, when I talk to women about dating again, I'm like, the only thing standing in between you and meeting your person is you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is the story you're telling yourself. It's the way you're perceiving the situation. It is you, which is good and bad, right?
Right.
It's good because you are the only one who can control that, which is amazing. All the power's in your hands. But yeah, you're seeing that play out in your own life, which I think is quite beautiful. But also, you touched on something that I feel like we have to go back to, which is this moment that I would be surprised if not every mother has gotten to this point where you just think, oh my God, this is too hard. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think every mom has to have had that moment at least once. I know I've had it personally several times where I think, and I've gotten to the point now where I know when I get to that moment, I need a break.
Mm-hmm.
I fully need to fill my cup so that I can continue giving to my children in the way that they need, because it is exhausting. It is a nonstop profession, job. And it's like, you hear all those things where it's congratulations. I saw this meme or video or something on the internet one time because people are funny. And it was like, congratulations, you've got the job. You never get a day off. And on the one holiday, you still have to work. It was like a Mother's Day meme, right? Like, it's your day. We're celebrating you. Only you get to still keep doing your job.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. And that I resonate with that so much. And I'm actually glad that you said that you have actually felt that way, because I have never heard another woman openly say that about being a mom. And so to have the feelings of, I want to quit, maybe she should just go live with her dad or whatever the case may be, is so validating. Also, because I don't feel like enough women, enough mothers talk about how they're actually feeling with their children. And I feel like if more women were open about the days that they feel like, that's it, I just can't do this anymore, it would help other mothers so much more, because it is hard. It's so hard. And in addition, and not to like make other women feel like their situation isn't valid or isn't hard, I do deal with a special set of circumstances. Aubrey, my daughter, does have epilepsy, and I'm not with her dad, and so we deal with that whole set of problems. And when those problems start to kick off, her dad's not rushing to come support me or come help me. I deal with all of that on my own. And so it is exhausting. And so I love that you said that, because I know that there have been so many times where I'm just like, I'm not cut out for this. Like, this was not a good idea. Like, there's no return on this, but what am I supposed to do?
Who thought I was the one that was going to be this perfect match for this kid? And here's what I'll tell you. Your kid did.
Yeah.
Because she chose you.
Yeah.
And it's because you are the resilient, never give up, I won't quit. But it doesn't mean that it's easy or that we just can float through life. Like, shit is hard sometimes. And I do think we have a tendency to glorify motherhood with rose-colored glasses. And you listen, the way we treat women in this society is kind of messed up. But all the expectations we have on motherhood especially are just unrealistic, I think. And so I'm very much a fan of being open and honest and teaching my clients that you come first, because you can't show up for your kid in the way that they need, regardless of what their needs are, if you haven't taken care of yourself first, which I think was another thing that I read on your bio that you sent over. And I definitely wanted to spend time talking. This is a great segue, actually, is this whole idea of loving ourselves fully before we can love anyone else. But is especially important, I think, when you are a mother and you're having to give when you've got nothing left. On some days, there's nothing left to give, and you still got to show up for them. So, what would you recommend for the woman who is, there will, in fact, be someone listening to this episode who is like, oh my God, that is me today. So what would you tell her? What is the first step that she can take towards filling her cup or loving herself in the way that she needs? Listen, we talked a lot about attracting love last month, but are you ready to attract the love of your life without creating an online profile? Come join me in Dating Divas, my online course designed to break your old patterns and change the type of person you're attracting. If you are tired of the same old song and dance of dating midlife, let me save you some time and make it easy. Dating Divas is open for enrollment, but hurry, doors close soon on this invitation. Go to ShaunaLee.com under services, or, click the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the show.
The first thing that I would tell her is to, especially if she has kids and they're crawling all over her and she just can't get a few minutes, is to go in, and I know that this sounds crazy and we probably hear this all the time, but go into the bathroom and just feel the way that you're feeling in that moment. And if you allow yourself to just feel everything that you're feeling in that moment, no matter how hard it is, even with the kids pounding out the door, just allow yourself to be present in that moment and just breathe through it. I know that can be so difficult, but just allowing yourself that 90 seconds to hold space for yourself can change the way that your whole day goes. Now, if you have some time, let's say you don't have any kids, or let's say you were able to get a break from your kids, I would start journaling. And I say to start journaling because that is what changed the trajectory of the way my life was going. It was the first thing that I started using to help heal my trauma and to get my mind right and to heal from depression and anxiety, and just kind of write, even if it's for 5 minutes a day. That will help you drastically fill your cup up, but also be connected to yourself and learn to accept yourself so that you can also learn to love yourself.
Listen, I'm such a huge fan of journaling. I talk about it all the time on repeat, so I'm so glad to hear somebody else say that as well. One of my freebies is actually journal prompts, because I so fully believe in the transformative impact of just writing words on paper. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't really have time to write, or I don't know what to write about, or which is why I created the journal prompt, so that I could just answer a question, just one a day. And the other thing is, I think, especially as moms, people think, well, I don't have time to sit down and write. What a luxury that is. So what would you recommend as a good first step to getting started?
Sure. So I don't want to suggest that people get up earlier than your kids, but if you're a business owner and you're a mom, you and I hate to say this, but there's really not an option. There really isn't an option. And I say get up before your kids because by the time you put them to bed, you're so exhausted at that point. You're not, the only thing you probably want to do is sit in front of the TV and veg or read or whatever the case may be. And I'm totally for that. But I recommend getting up. It doesn't have to be a long time, like for an hour, 30 minutes. I recommend, even if it's 5, 10 minutes earlier than the rest of your house, and just go set a timer and set it for only 5 minutes and just write it out. And a lot of people tell me, okay, well, what happens if someone reads my journal? What if someone finds my journal and starts reading it? Write in yellow ink. You can literally go get a pen and write that's in yellow ink and write on it. As long as it's like a mostly white paper, no one can really see it. And I know this because when I write in yellow, I cannot see it. It strains my eyes. It's really hard for me to see. So I always recommend people write in yellow if they really have that fear of what if someone reads my journal. And start with 5 minutes. And what you will notice is that 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes and 10 minutes turns into 15. And before you know it, you're like, oh, I need to journal about that. Oh, I need to get some clarity on that. I'm going to go and write about that. So 5 minutes a day, you can literally do that in the bathroom. Like it's just anything is possible if we allow it to be. It could be the 5 minutes that you're sitting in the car before you go into the house and embrace all the chaos. That 5 minutes can be used anywhere, absolutely anywhere.
Yeah. And you're right. You start, and then next thing you know, you're like, well, that wasn't enough time. I need more time. And so then the next day you build in a little more. Every time you talk about being in the bathroom, I'm picturing the little fingers under the door. I'm like, why can't they just leave me alone for 5 minutes? Little fingers. And if it's not the kids, it's the cat. The cat's paw under the door.
Yeah. Or the husband or the partner or whoever.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that the journaling is a great thing. I read The Artist Way, and they talk in this book about how you just free write. And their recommendation is 3 pages, to start with 3 pages, which I think is a little ambitious for someone who's just trying to find the time to get some thoughts down. But I have found when I'm journaling that it is a good way. You said get clarity. And I think that's an amazing way. If I'm conflicted about something, or I don't quite know where to go, or I don't know, here was the latest one. I completely overreacted in a personal situation. And I realized in the moment, wow, this is like a big reaction to a real small thing. And so the next day I woke up and I was my morning writing, and I'm kind of journaling through that, trying to figure out like, why was that reaction coming up about this mundane little thing? And it's a great way to it's another version of meditating. I think it's a way to clear your mind. You're getting it out. So then it's not just jumbled in your mind. By writing it down, you're like expressing it and getting it out. But then as you write it, it's kind of, I don't know about you, but I write much slower than I think. So it forces me to kind of slow down.
Right.
And in that process, things become more clear.
Yeah.
Just by taking the act of like slowing the crazy thoughts, the monkey brain, by writing it all down. And I always recommend, if somebody's afraid of somebody reading it, because it's funny, when I started journaling, I wrote with the intention that my family would read it one day, like after I was dead and gone, and they would finally understand their mother. And now it's taken a total different shift. But I always tell people, don't write it in a journal, write it on a piece of paper, and then you can burn it. It's not about the thing being left over. It's about you expressing it and getting it out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of burning it too, because it's almost like you're releasing it, right? So after you see, or like in your situation, I would have called that like observation. You see everything from this bird's eye point of view, and that's what brings that clarity in. Then you release it, and you release it by burning it. It doesn't always have to be in a book where it's kept forever and ever, and someone might find your deepest, darkest secrets. It doesn't have to be that way at all. But there is something about physically writing, because people are like, oh, well, can't I just type it on my computer and that way I can lock it, or on my phone? And there is something about physically writing it that changes everything. And I wish I knew like what exactly that was that makes the difference, but it does make a huge difference.
It does. And I do know people who have journaled by typing on a computer. And I think actually one person I worked with, that was the method, because she said she couldn't focus on her thoughts enough, and typing was faster for her. So it was an easier way for her to get started.
Right.
And essentially it was just the baby step. And then from there, after the typing, after the expressing the thoughts became a habit and more comfortable, then she was able to go and start writing the words on paper in a journal.
Yeah, I love that, because she started. Sometimes we make these habits and these goals so much harder than they have to be. And because she started with where she was comfortable and where she was at, then the steps become so much bigger. Whereas when we take these baby steps, or we start with 5 minutes, or we type on the computer because that's easier, it makes everything so much easier. It compounds so much quicker when we're able to realize those things about ourselves. Like people ask me all the time, I'm a runner, and they're always like, well, why don't you go to the trails and run? Because my neighborhood is a great neighborhood, but once you get out of the neighborhood, it's not necessarily, it's questionable. I don't want to say it's out of control, but it's questionable. Well, why don't you go to a trail and run? Because I know that if I go and get in my car to go drive to the trail, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to do it. So I may as well just meet myself where I'm at, knowing that I have that weakness, that if I have to get in the car and do something, I'm not doing it. So we're just headed straight out the door, because I know that I'll do it.
Listen, when it comes to exercise, I have to do it first thing in the morning before I have a chance to come up with one of the 800 excuses that I will come up with. Like, I know my path to success is just get up and do it before I can even think about it. Like, because otherwise, nope. I'm the queen of excuses is what I've told people. I can give you 800 reasons why I should not exercise.
Right.
Even though I have a lot of reasons why I should.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. When my next question, I love this one. And I told you this a little bit before we started recording, but I love the answers that come out of this, because they're so varied and different, and everyone is so perfect. So what advice would you give to the younger you?
Okay. And I love this question, and I love that I get to openly speak about this, because we see it in Facebook groups all the time. And I would not necessarily give my younger self advice, because I know how I was even just 5-10 years ago, and I was never listening to myself. I never really trusted myself. And even if even if the red flags and the intuition, even if it went off 10 years ago, it didn't matter. But I wouldn't necessarily give myself advice. But what I do want to say is that your younger self doesn't really need advice. She needs your trust, she needs your love, and she needs your forgiveness. And she needs those things because there are still parts of you that are stuck at a certain age, because we've rejected and abandoned those parts of us out of survival. It's nothing that you did intentionally. And she's stuck at that age. And the reason why she needs your trust and your forgiveness and your love is so that she can grow up and integrate, so that you don't have to deal with self-sabotage anymore. And so that self-trust and that love and that forgiveness is so critical to what your younger self truly needs from you.
100%. Yes. And, you touched on, so I was thinking, oh yes, this is where inner child healing comes from, right? Because we all have this little version of ourselves that is stuck where we left them.
Right.
And so it is all about, and most of the answers, I will say, do incorporate an element of, I love you, you got this, girl,
You're
like
right.
it's going to be okay. And less of it is about advice, and most of it is about what you've talked about, is forgiveness and love and just validating
Right.
who they are and where they are. So I think that was a perfect answer.
Good.
That
And
was amazing.
I want to add to that. I think it's so important to validate our past experiences, especially as women, because even when we speak our truth, even when we speak up, people say things, and because it was from years ago, you question what it is that you said or your experiences. And so to have so many women come through and validate their past or validate their younger selves and what they went through is so powerful, because that means that we really are shifting into this new paradigm where women really are stepping into their power, where women really feel like they can actually make things happen, and that they don't have to play small, or they don't have to diminish themselves because someone said that their experience is not what they actually lived. So I love that we're doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing to add to that. That was perfect. That's amazing. And I think it was actually a lot of what you were just saying was reminding me of, believe it or not, the Barbie movie that I just saw.
Okay.
And I know it's all the rage and everyone's talking about it. And everyone has lots to say. But I thought there was, at the crux of this movie, was girl power to the nth degree. And listen, I'm here for girl
Yeah,
power
right.
all day long, every day. And that a little bit brings levity to what I'm really here for, and that is women stepping into their power and knowing who they are and how powerful they truly are. And this goes for every human on the planet, male or female. I think as women, we are conditioned to distrust ourselves and not believe in our power because we are powerful
Right.
beings. Every person, every human on the planet is powerful beings. But this movie did such a great way of just bringing that to light. And I'm reluctantly publicly saying I'm a big fan of this movie, because I'm like, oh, I don't really want to say I am, but I loved this movie. And it was the undertones of the power of women was just amazing. But that's exactly what you were talking to,
Yeah.
was owning your story, trusting yourself, and really stepping into your power, which I'm here for it. I tell you, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you've seen the movie. My sister said, I have not seen the movie personally. My sister said the same thing, that it's really just about Barbie finding her purpose, and really about women empowerment and all of those things. Because I had said I had saw something on Facebook about it being completely opposite, and diving into other things, and I was just like, well, this is going to be interesting. But of course, it's going to cause a huge debate. It is Barbie, and it is something that I grew up with as a child, so I love that the movie's out. But I love to hear that it's about women's empowerment, because I always thought that that's what Barbie was about to begin with.
Well, and yeah, and they address that. They talk about, I don't want to give too much of away.
Right.
I will just say that I'm always curious when I love something and I hear someone else saying they didn't love it. I used to be a tad offended, like, wait, why would I? But now what I've learned to do is just get curious and be like, well, that's interesting. What didn't you like about it? And I haven't heard anyone tell me specifically what they don't like yet. I hear that people are talking, like there's negative and positive feedback, but I haven't actually heard any meat or substance to anybody saying anything negative about it. And I keep waiting for someone to say, well, I hated this part, or I didn't. And I'm not hearing any of that yet. So I'm just
Right.
curious to know more about when people say, oh, no, I didn't like it. I'm like, oh, tell me more. What didn't
Yeah.
you like? Because it usually is poking at them. That's why they didn't like it.
Right. Right. Yes. And usually And usually that's like a tell-all sign of where some digging needs to happen, or just to the point where, and not that people can't like things, but if you feel like you have to
Sure.
vocally say those things and keep saying it and keep repeating it and judging other people for liking it because you didn't like it, that means that there's something you got to start digging at, because it's really about a judgment of yourself and not about other people.
Yep. Usually the case. Well, okay. So my next question, we talk about the past and kind of where you are now.
Sure.
When you look to the future, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
So my own life is, I see it now as having a very easy and loving relationship with my daughter. And I say easy as in the sense of ease, not necessarily it being easy. I don't want to say I don't ever believe it will be easy, but I'm talking about in the sense of flow, in the sense of ease, in the sense of presence and
Yes.
patience. And I see and this one is going to be a huge one, and I haven't actually openly shared this, is I desire to have $1 billion empire that really helps women and the way they deal with their trauma. And I really still want the way that I deal with trauma, or way the world sees trauma, I want that to shift. And I want to be the pioneer of that.
I love that.
Thank you.
Well, and I think that it's interesting. And listen, this is one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I wanted to celebrate women who are showing up and doing scary things and making fuck tons of money. Because one of the other things that we are conditioned to believe in the society, that it's somehow bad or
Mhm.
wrong for us to want a lot of money, when in the reality, good-hearted people do good
Yes.
things with money.
Yeah.
And whatever your mission is, with more money, it reaches further.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, it needs to be $1 billion empire so that you can touch all the people that need you to show up for them. So I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. And you are right. When we have especially a mission that big, it does require money to be able to tap into other resources, but also to be able to disrupt the industry. Because if we're not in a position to disrupt the industry, we almost perpetrate the autopilot, just operating because that's the way that we're told to operate, or because that's the way that we've always done things. Money really does allow you to disrupt the industry. And that's essentially what most women are after. They don't want to just operate the way that they're told and be the good girl that that we've been raised to be. They want to be the rebel. They want to be seen and heard. And that does require money in our current society.
Yep. Well said. Well, so I know after this conversation, some of my listeners are going to want to know where they can find you. So
Sure.
how can people find you?
You can find me pretty much everywhere. I'm not on Threads. I'm not on Twitter. That to me is not something that I've tapped into. But you can find me at Transform with Angela.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I'll be sure to definitely include all of your contact information in the show notes, but I know that you have a free course that you also offer people, and I thought I would give you a chance to tell people about that too.
Sure. So the free course is called The Secrets of Feeling Worthy and Deserving. And it is all about laying down the foundations to feeling worthy and deserving, which is what I actually use with my one-to-one clients, my courses, my programs, etc. And it is to lay down the foundations of divine transformation, which we focus on safety, energy, and then mindset. And all of that is in this free course. And it's absolutely amazing. The people that have taken the course have seen great results. And I'm so happy that I get to release this as an opportunity to be free, so that so many women can access this and have the opportunity to step into feeling worthy and deserving.
That's awesome. I will definitely include the link to that, but Again, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I appreciate you spending time with me, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun.
Did you like this episode, or did you love it? Inquiring minds want to know. The best way to support this show is to subscribe and leave a review. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.